Chapter 1, Age of Mechs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They called this era the Age of Mechs. It was not as if the introduction of mechs replaced other weapons of war. In the galactic war against the alien races that sought to wipe out humanity, warships and weapons of mass destruction still played an essential role, yet a nuclear bomb was too destructive if used against humans. Alien races could easily pick up a bargain if humanity constantly weakened themselves to settle internal grudges. These pointless wars would only end when humanity united all of its separate fiefs. Many visionaries have attempted to do so, and succeeded. Up to a point, peace never lasted. The human race had an inborn tendency to fall apart. The grand enterprise of unity failed time and time again, so people separated, still loosely allied by their common ancestral heritage, but with nothing else in common. Wars continued, but a complex web of treaties limited the destruction of essential war material. The human race stood a better chance of resisting alien incursions once it stopped destroying their own settlements and warships. It's all fine and dandy to conquer your neighbor's planet. At the very least, don't bring out the big guns and please lease the expensive stuff in space intact. Not the best solution, but somehow humanity muddled through. With the stagnation of naval battles, ground warfare took on new significance. Infantry, tanks and artillery enjoyed a resurgence of popularity as the fractious human race fought over their own territory. Naturally, any invaders didn't have it easy. Forced to operate on enemy soil, the conflicts often devolved into wars of attrition. Even if the invaders painstakingly triumphed over their enemies, was it worth the effort? They would find out in dismay that they lost more money from their army than what they gained in territory. Most of the warmongers realized that waging war was a money-losing business. Just as planned. The pacifists thought as they patted their backs. The treaties had been extensively drafted for just such an outcome. Without the tools to threaten a planet into a quick surrender, the warmongers had to rely on old and inefficient technology in order to conquer territories. It turned out the peace lovers celebrated too early. Ever since the legendary Mach Lu first stepped on the battlefield with a giant humanoid machine called a Mech, war had changed forever. It advanced into a whole new paradigm, able to perform ably in even the most inhospitable planets. The first mechs made a mockery of the slow-paced and static way of war of traditional armies. The human body is the best weapon of humans. One of the lead inventors of the modern war mech remarked after the first models blitzed half a massive nation's territory. Everyone knows that infantry is flexible but fragile while tanks are tough but clumsy. So one day we thought, why not make a new weapon that takes the human form and simply scale it up? It resulted in a revolutionary weapon that charmed humans across the galaxy for its evocative look and inspiring capabilities. Faster than infantry, more flexible than tanks and able to carry a variety of weapons, they nonetheless required much less supplies to keep them running. Their logistical footprint was a fraction of what a conventional army gobbled up. This alone ensured that mechs dethroned all other service branches. The Age of Mechs unfolded into splendor. Broadcasts surrounding mechs earned record views. Online and offline games brought the masses closer to glamorized new machines. Major arms manufacturers invested in the rapidly growing mech industry. Countless startups offering their own unique takes on the mechs popped up like mushrooms. The Age of Mechs seemed to herald humanity into a new golden age. Unfortunately, only a small number of elites could step into the true world of mechs. The most basic mech models involved hundreds of patents and other proprietary knowledge that would cost a fortune to license. Those interested in piloting an authentic war mech also needed the right genes. The highly arcane neural interface that allowed pilots to control their mechs as natural as moving their own bodies could only be piloted by a gifted handful. Those who ignored the warnings fried their brains. It took a long time for researchers to establish a clear view of how many people possessed the right potential. From the latest statistics, only a mere 3.5% of all of humanity possessed the right genetics to successfully connect to a neural interface. These privileged elites, tested for compatibility from their 10th birthday, enjoyed admiration and worship from the 96.5% who were doomed to never step into a cockpit. Not all of the 3.5% would actually go on to pilot a mech, but even the poorest potentate from the most backwater planet had to undergo training. Once they gained a basic proficiency in piloting, they were added to the reserves. Just in case, Ves Larkinson was born with the conviction that he belonged in the cockpit. His father was a mech pilot. His grandfather also piloted mechs. He could name at least 9 direct ancestors who all served honorably in the Bright Republic's renowned mech corps. Most of his aunts, uncles, and the rest of the extended Larkinson family had a long history of piloting mechs. "Dad, what's it like to be a pilot?" "It's dangerous, but it's also the only time I feel alive." His 10th birthday changed his life. His entire world crashed down on him once the doctor from the Republic announced the results. His genetics marked him as one of the 96.5%. In other words, he was a plebeian, a norm. No matter which word was in vogue, Ves became a commoner doomed to never to enter a cockpit in his life. There's nothing dishonorable about having different genes. The doctor reassured the young Ves. He had already crushed the dreams of countless kids. One more hardly fazed him at all. No one is good at everything. The rest of the 96.5% get by just fine. Find some passion in your capabilities. Not everyone is destined to follow their father's footsteps. His father, Wrinkle Larkinson, half-hearted patted the young V's back as he gave him an ice cream. What else could he do? His frequent tours of duty left Ves to wallow in his depression alone, and so Ves turned from a precocious boy who dreamed about mechs into a sullen teenager drowning himself in games and partying. With a deceased mother and a father absent from frequent tours of service, no one could rein Ves in. He graduated from high school with less than stellar grades. What now? Ves finally pieced himself together once he considered his future. He couldn't waste away his life forever. I'm not a pilot. I'm never going to be a pilot. All I really know is mechs. If I am never fated to pilot a mech, then I can still do something else. I'm still a Larkinson. Mechs are in my blood. Ves narrowed his goals. If he couldn't pilot a mech, then he'd be the one to make them. In the Age of Mechs, a mech designer led the development of mechs. Just as crucial as mech pilots, they came up with innovative designs of mechs and shaped them into reality. Some of these designers were just as famous as the aces who achieved incredible feats with their mechs. Some of the most prestigious designers worked for the major arms manufacturers. They were able to deftly spit out a casual new design that would be sold 1,000,000 times. These were the star designers, the superstars who had CEOs and head of states at their beck and call. Even a casual sneeze could impact the stock prices of the companies they worked at, for they were just too influential. Many of the larger human states relied on their exclusive designs to give them an edge in conflicts involving mechs. Then came the middle class of the mech designers, the entrepreneurs with at least a complete series of mech designs. Adept in all facets of what constituted a mech, these seasoned engineers could take a pile of random parts and come up with unique designs that filled most of the conventional roles any decent client demanded. Some designers focused on churning out loads of mechs at the most affordable cost, while others might spend their whole lives on a single model. What was left was the bottom heap. About 90% of all designers fell into this category. This included the fresh graduates, the failed entrepreneurs and the washed-out old-timers with outdated knowledge. They couldn't design anything other than rip-offs or blatant copies of more successful models. Most of these dregs were doomed to serve as faceless cogs, working behind the scenes to repair or maintain other people's mechs. The lucky ones still get to be involved in mech design by fulfilling a niche in customization. They took existing mechs and changed them in little ways, or licensed an old, existing design and added their own flair to it. The cutthroat competition in the saturated market didn't allow many to stay afloat for long. Only some got by with this business model. Ves hoped to be one of them. With his SOSO grades, he could forget about attending a prestigious university. He only managed to scrape enough merits to attend a program offered by the Rittersberg University of Technology, an average institution from the Bright Republic's capital. All he got 5 years later was a bland degree from a bland institution. In other words, he was worthless in the eyes of employers. That was okay. His father Wrinkle supported him all the way through. He even spent much of his time gathering the capital to kick-start his son's business. They both had a plan. They would start a one-man mech boutique with enough automation to print its own parts and allow VES to assemble a mech from scratch. Wrinkle would refer him to his buddies in the service for cheap jobs and let VES dip into the world of customization step by step. Once VES built up his reputation, he might be able to move on to designing his own variants. All those plans came crashing down when VES returned to an empty home back in Cloudy Curtain, their home planet. Wrinkle enjoyed a good salary as a mech pilot, so he could afford a grand townhouse in the suburbs. He recently sold it in order to scrape enough cash to acquire a workshop just outside of town. It only offered enough space for a small living area. The workshop could use a makeover. The modular, prefabricated structure looked second-hand, as if it was salvaged off a battlefield or scrapyard. With the amount of rust and scratches its exterior sported, it was a miracle it hadn't fallen apart. When VES stepped inside, he sighed in relief. The essentials were still in one shape. The insides looked fairly clean. All of the valuable machines needed to run his enterprise were present, if second-hand. His dad might not know his stuff, but he knew plenty of people who did. "Where are you, Dad?" After weeks of silence, VES had to face the fact that his dad was missing. That shouldn't be a cause for alarm. His dad had been assigned to a regiment stationed at the border between the Bright Republic and the belligerent Vesia Kingdom. Any incidents that might flare up could cause his father to be recalled. When VES called his father's friends, he found out he never returned to duty. After contacting the police, it seemed that Wrinkle had never shown his face elsewhere. All the galactic calls and electronic messages sent to his father fell off a cliff. No one could find any trace of his presence. The Cloudy Curtain Planetary Bank quickly came knocking. It turned out the workshop components such as the spiffy 3D printer had been bought with a loan. A 3D printer was an essential machine that turned raw materials into factory-quality mech parts. His father had to borrow over 330 million Bright credits in order to finance the acquisition of assets. With this much money, anyone could buy half a dozen advanced mechs. VES could spend his lifetime working for an average mech manufacturer and still not earn enough to pay back the huge debt. He instantly fell into a cycle of distress and panic when he read through the bank's polite but impersonal note. "What kind of mess did my father drag me into?" The bank took 3 pages to state that all of the debt was in his name. He would have to hand over the workshop and all of its valuable machinery in case he missed a single annual interest payment. In short, VES had to scrounge up about 5 million credits in the next 3 months in order to meet the next payment. He lifted up his armband-shaped communicator and activated its miniature projector. A screen came into view that displayed a menu. He hopelessly switched to the credit account linked to the device. His account only held a measly 1,200 credits. That was his spending money for the month. VES had little means of earning the required amount of money. With his dad gone missing, it was questionable whether VES was entitled to the life insurance and other benefits his father arranged. VES followed up his father's insurance policy because he needed every penny he could squeeze out of the system. Nothing came out of the meetings. The insurance company was as obstinate as a dog chewing a bone. VES swiped away the latest messages from the bank. "I'm broke. I can't even scrounge up the credits to buy the raw materials I need to fabricate new parts. How am I supposed to do business?" Within a day, he called the bank, the insurance company and the government. What he got back wasn't good. The bank had already written VES off. They wanted to get their claws on the workshop before VES screwed something up and depreciated its value. The only useful thing he received from the bank was a package that Wrinkle stashed at the bank in case he got out of touch. The insurance company claimed that Wrinkle was merely missing in action at worst. As an active serviceman, he might return months or years later, so VES was not entitled to a single penny until the company received solid proof that he had died. If not, the money would only be released after a period of 5 years. The government was its usual bureaucratic self. VES only heard lots of incomprehensible jargon before he plainly hung up. He'd get nothing useful there. VES was alone. His dad had gone off to the deep end, leaving VES to pick up the pieces. His father only left him with a lousy package with a casual note pasted in front. "To my son VES, in case I'm not home." Opening it up, VES was mildly surprised to pick up a secure data chip. Most data transfers today occurred entirely wirelessly. People only used data chips when they absolutely had to keep their content secure. VES turned off his comms connection to the galactic net before accessing the old data chip. It took 3 seconds to load its contents, which was unusually long for a chip this size. An unknown program suddenly took over the holographic projection. Initializing the Mech Designer System. New user detected. Initiating deep scan in 2400 millicycles. Please prepare properly. Wait, what? VES asked the program, just before the comm released a huge shock. VES passed out in an instant. And so began his journey as a mech designer. Chapter 2, Mech Designer System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When VES woke up, he brushed a hand over his brown hair and wondered why he ended up on the floor. It was the data chip. VES tried to find the data chip that dropped him like a log. After a quick search, he only came across a fried piece of metals and other melted bits. The chip self-destructed after following its programming. He bewilderingly turned his gaze to his wrist communicator, which was still in pristine condition. That's strange. Anything that could have fried this chip should have melted my comm in the process. How could the chip have melted itself without transferring all that heat to my comm unit? Cautiously, VES activated his comm, expecting it to malfunction. Instead, it turned online without a problem. After browsing the menu, he found that nothing changed except for the addition of one new program, the Mech Designer System. The name already sounded boastful. The act of designing mechs was an intricate discipline that required years of study in the fields of mechanics, physics, material science and more. Even after graduating from college, you merely got your foot through the door. It took more than experience and brilliance for a mech designer to achieve true success. Just the thought of having a single app whip up a simple design in a matter of minutes rankled VES. The mere thought of such a software devalued the 5 years he spent on becoming a mech designer. Still, his father left him this system, for a reason. VES had no idea where Wrinkle got his hands on this mysterious app. Since he couldn't get any more answers, VES decided to run the app. Welcome to the Mech Designer System. Please design your new mech. The message ended there, leaving nothing for VES to follow up. That's it, deep scan complete. Registering new user Ves Larkinson. Welcome package granted. You got anything more than that? Please inspect your status. To display this page, say status. Status. Status, name, Ves Larkinson, profession, novice mech designer, specializations, none, design points, 0. Attributes, strength, 0.6. Dexterity, 0.7. Endurance, 0.6. Intelligence, 1.2. Creativity, 0.3. Concentration, 0.9. Neural aptitude, F. Skills, assembly, novice, business, apprentice. Computer science, incompetent, mathematics, incompetent, mechanics, apprentice, metallurgy, apprentice, physics, novice, evaluation, good-for-nothing loser. Hey, who are you calling a loser? User Ves Larkinson is a qualified loser for having spent half of your life wasting away your life. Your frequent diversions have left you ill-prepared for the future. Your inability to pay off your debt is a direct consequence of your ineptitude. Ves had to suppress the urge to raise his middle finger. Instead, he challenged this stupid system. I admit, I used to be a stupid kid, but I cleaned up my act. I'm a mech designer now. It is your lucky day. The Mech Designer System is the ultimate tool in this galaxy to design any machine that falls under the category of mechs. Any authorized user is allowed to use this system's many tools to design any mech imaginable with no conceivable limits. Who would believe such shameless boasting? So can I just whip up something that weighs 1,000 tons, runs at Mach 50 and can even travel faster than light? Certainly user, but you must design its components and integrate them into a viable design by yourself. If you then wish to fabricate the design using the system, then you will be required to exchange a corresponding energy value expressed in design points. It sounded ridiculous that a piece of software can just wish a mech into existence with energy alone. How many design points does it take to fabricate a mech? How easy can I earn these points anyway? An average mech requires 1,445,645,313 design points in order to be fabricated accurately. Calculating your current combination of attributes and skills. After estimating your capabilities, you are able to earn an average of 3.89 design points per day. Ves was literally speechless. The system disparaged him again in a roundabout way. You seem pretty useless. How am I supposed to get some use out of you if I can only earn about 4 DP a day? Yeah, I thought so. Ves muttered quietly. His finger already hovered over his comm, ready to shut down this useless app. User, please do not exit the program yet. You have yet to explore the menu, nor have you opened up your welcome package. Okay, so give me a menu then. Mech Designer System menu, status, designer, missions, skill tree, shop, lottery, inventory. User, as a novice mech designer, your privileges are limited. You currently do not have access to the missions, shop and lottery menu. Ves browsed the designer option first. The system unfolded into a vast holographic design interface that seemed to be ripped off from a popular design suite that Ves had frequently used in his student days. The system's version came with a lot of additional features, though Ves wasn't in the mood to explore them right now. The skill tree unfolded even more elaborately, taking up a panoramic view. The most fundamental skills sat at the top. It started with the most basic fields such as mechanics and mathematics. Beneath them nested an unfolding expanse of subskills that seemingly went on forever. He could upgrade skills as diverse as artistic judgment. This skill tree alone appeared way too fantastical and unreal. How could anyone improve themselves with the press of a button? All it took to upgrade his skills was to spend a couple of so-called design points. It was fairly uncanny that the system managed to map his current skills pretty accurately. Ves reserved his judgment for the moment. His father had to have a compelling reason to pass on this absurd piece of software to him. Ves refused to consider the system to be a work of fantasy. He opened the inventory last. It appeared to be a typical, game-like interface except he couldn't store or take out real universe items. The inventory mainly dealt with storing designs and other virtual content, though it offered the option of storing real items later on. Naturally, his inventory contained no designs, but he found the vaunted welcome package in the miscellaneous tab. He curiously tapped it with his finger. The holographic box cheerfully opened up, accompanied by the faux celebratory fanfare prevalent in cheap online games. 3 silhouettes floated in front of him, tempting his anticipation a tiny bit even as he remained skeptical of this system. Congratulations, you have received 10 design points. Please spend them well. Just 10 measly design points? Ves exasperatingly questioned. From browsing the previous menus, he learned that 10 design points was only worth peanuts to the system. With this amount, he could neither afford to increase his attributes or upgrade any skills. The paltry amount only afforded him enough to purchase a soda. He then clicked the next silhouette, which revealed 3 copper lottery tickets. It allowed him to draw 3 prizes from the system's lowest-ranked lottery draw. When Ves activated a ticket, the lottery page projected a prize wheel. After staring at the wheel in doubt, he spun the large object by heaving a lever with his arm. You have failed to draw a prize from your copper lottery ticket. Please draw again. You have failed to draw a prize from your copper lottery ticket. Please draw again. You have failed to draw a prize from your copper lottery ticket. Please draw again. Really, even the lottery tickets from the convenience store aren't so stingy. After using up the lottery tickets, the system's final present unfolded. The silhouette faded away, revealing a small mechanical cat. The pet displayed on the hologram seemed no different from any of the other artificial intelligences available on the galactic net. Popular with little girls around the galaxy, these virtual pets offered companionship and distraction without the hassle of taking care of a real animal. So you got me a virtual cat. Whoop-de-doo. You are mistaken, user. This gold-ranked auxiliary companion is an extremely rare random draw from the welcome package. Congratulations on acquiring your new gem cat. The creature in front of Ves shifted. The holographic interface dimmed as the projection of the mechanical cat brightened. The cat thudded on the floor with an audible thump. Just as Ves thought the system was tricking him, the cat meowed and physically brushed his leg with its very real body. What? That this couldn't be happening. The cat felt real. Ves bent down and put his hands around the light metallic shell of the cat and lifted it in front of his face. The cat questioningly purred as it beheld its new owner while Ves processed its appearance. His communicator was just a basic model. It didn't possess the fancy microfabrication options that came with premium models. Even if his comm turned into premium model overnight, it was impossible to fabricate a mechanical animal larger than a mosquito. His comm simply couldn't store the required materials. Who knew how the cat came into existence? The system's workings already broke the bounds of reality. Do not be surprised, user. As the ultimate design tool for mechs, the Mech Designer System is able to utilize, redacted, to instantly fabricate any design or item you have exchanged at the shop at the cost of design points. Only until now did it sink in that V's father had left him an impossibly amazing software. Though he understood very little so far, he was fairly certain that whoever created this system was light years ahead of even the most advanced human scientists. He guessed that the system might be hiding some massive secrets, some of which may even involve alien technologies. These questions were so far above V's tiny head that he simply set them aside for the moment. He had more immediate concerns. This cat is kind of cute. Ves remarked as he scratched the mechanical creature's head. Is it supposed to do something more than beg for scratches and hugs? Concentrate on the gem cat in order to call up its status. Pet status, name, none, owner, Ves Larkinson, rank, gold, exclusive, level, 1. Skills, gem excretion I. What kind of a skill is gem excretion? Concentrate on the skill to see further details. Gem excretion, the ability to convert low-value materials into rare gemstones of a higher value through manual absorption, digestion and excretion. These gemstones provide random benefits helpful to any mech that incorporates them into their design. Certain raw materials have a higher emphasis on the benefits that the resulting gemstones can express. It took half a minute for the description to sink in with Ves. From what he could understand, this cat ate minerals, digested it into gems. These gems ought to be quite valuable depending on their effects. He might be able to earn some quick cash if he sold these shiny gems. Do not overestimate the gem cat. At level 1, the pet can only excrete 1 gem per week. Ves sighed in disappointment. The cat booped his nose with its soft paw. Well, I'm better off now than before, so I've got no grounds to complain. As for you, let me call you lucky, since I'm counting on you to be my lucky charm. The mech cat adorably meowed in response, indicating that its artificial intelligence possessed at least some form of low sentience. Ves searched the cabinets of his workshop and scrounged up a pile of loose ore. The random materials were likely left by the previous owner that his father didn't bother to tidy up when he bought them secondhand. Ves took a head-sized chunk and the small cat somehow managed to gobble up the entire thing in a clear violation of the laws of physics. There was no way a normal mechanical cat could fit so much material in its cat-sized belly. Okay, this is clearly another freaky thing in a long list of impossibilities. No use cracking my head over these miracles. I've to take care of my money problem first. Ves dropped the cat and left it to explore the workshop alone. He approached his desk and turned on the computer terminal in order to do some research. He briefly went over the manuals of the machines in his workshop. He found that they were basic but reliable models, and didn't differ much from what he used during his studies. He then checked the prices of mechs, parts, and raw materials at the public markets. Cloudy Curtain was just a regular boring residential planet, famed for its colorful clouds rather than any industry, so its mech market was anemic. If Ves wanted to sell his products to a viable market, then he needed access to the bigger trading nodes nestled in the heart of the Bright Republic. Not anyone qualified to do so. Ves lacked both reputation and a track record. Even if he did gain access, he lacked the capital to acquire the raw resources needed to fabricate a mech. It takes money to make money. That was one of the most important lessons he learned in college. Surprisingly, he did quite well in his business classes. Ves owed this achievement due to his aspirations. It also helped that the classes only involved simple math. After half a day of research, Ves gained a clearer idea on the viability of his new enterprise. He gave up on producing a physical product. The areas of mech design, mech customization, or mech fabrication all required substantial capital in order to step foot in them. He needed at least several million credits up front. The only economically viable market where he could realistically offer his services was in the field of mech repair and maintenance. However, his workshop was limited by its scale, and without a reputation he doubted he could attract any customers. He needed to make a start in a market with a low barrier of entry, one that didn't demand any prior investment. Ves made a resigned look at the section of games on his terminal, Iron Spirit, the most exclusive galactic mech simulator in the galaxy. Iron Spirit was not the most played online game on the market. However, its esports broadcasts attracted a very wide audience, allowing the game to foster a large and diverse creators market. The reason for the game's success could be attributed to its adherence to reality. Iron Spirit emulated reality so well that players had to buy or rent expensive simulation pods to pilot a mech. It turned the player base into an elitist club that served as a decent simulation to actual mech combat. The BSBH Corporation stuck to the creed of realism so much that its virtual mechs had to be fabricated within its simulated ecosystem in a realistic manner. Only the mainstream mech models could be bought off the shelf. The true high-performing mechs in the game were all customized or original designs that could be sold for either gold, the virtual currency, or with real credits. Unlike piloting a virtual mech, Iron Spirit didn't demand its designers to be a potentate, so even an average norm like Ves could engage in its virtual market. As Ves registered a Mech Designer's account in the game, he came across a few snags. He had to pony up a registration fee of 800 bright credits. This wiped out more than half of his remaining savings. When the game approved his account, he encountered another barrier. Customizing any existing design required the purchase of a so-called virtual license. The licenses for the cheapest part started at around 10,000 credits, while the licenses for the most outdated one-star mechs were valued at 100,000 credits. I'm such an idiot for forgetting the licensing fees. BSBH apparently didn't want its virtual mech market to be flooded by a tsunami of awful designs. With no other way out, Ves turned on his wrist communicator and started up the Mech Designer System. Hey system, I don't have the money to afford a virtual license. Can you lend me a hand? The system accessed his terminal through a wireless connection. It took only a dozen seconds to scan the entire game and absorb additional information from the galactic net. Tutorial mission received. Please enter the missions page to browse the details. Ves obediently turned to the missions page of the system. Mission, Tutorial Part 1, Your First Design, Difficulty, F rank, Prerequisites, Be an idiot who can't solve his own problems. Description. As a mech designer, it is shameful that you have not completed a single design that is ready for sale. Use the Mech Designer System and the provided mech model to design a customized mech that has a minimum deviance of 10% and a performance improvement of 2% of its base model. Reward: a random 1-star virtual mech license. A random 1-star virtual component license. This sounds doable. Can I ask how you're able to reward me with those virtual licenses? Nothing is impossible to the Mech Designer System. With enough design points, the user may even be able to achieve immortality. Please increase your Mech Designer rank for a more detailed answer. Yeah, right. Ves guessed the system had some way of hacking into Iron Spirit servers. In order to preserve his sanity, Ves stopped his inquiry and instead turned his attention to the designer mode. It wasn't until Ves saw what kind of licenses he had to work with that he practically spat out blood. This is impossible. Chapter 3, First Design. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As a reputable mech simulator, Iron Spirit only featured real mechs. The base designs sold in its virtual store could be bought in real life with almost the same performance. With its vast and extensive database, the game worked hard to group them together in a simple manner. The BSBH Corporation eventually decided to adopt a 1-star to 5-star rating. They later added even higher ratings with the introduction of even higher performing models. The game's database included many older designs, but its library of current designs was incomplete. Many top-notch mech designs were highly guarded secrets. These so-called next-generation models represented the cutting edge of mech design. The Age of Mechs spanned 400 years, so the game offered plenty of models even without the latest designs. Iron Spirit's lowest 1-star mech models used to plow the battlefield alongside legends such as Mtlnovel, the mech pioneer. Compared to contemporary models, these ancient relics fell short in many ways. They were slow, clumsy, inefficient, and sometimes looked ridiculous. When Ves took a peek at these clown-like models, he wondered if their designers had a few screws loose. Systems Designer Mode already loaded one such design. The Fantasia 2R incorporated a radical humanoid design scheme, and was the second iteration of a flawed first edition. The Fantasia masked very little due to its slim and narrow design, allowing it to run faster and longer than the stockier models available at the time. These gains were made at the cost of other parameters such as armor and firepower. For whatever reason, the designers shaped the Fantasia 2R in the form of a woman. Its concave torso, sloping breastplate, thin limbs, and narrow head evoked the appearance of a supermodel dressed in skimpy armor. The older 1R model already looked like a feminist's worst nightmare. The manufacturers doubled down by attaching hair-like sensor threads on top of the 2R's head. The sensors at least served a practical purpose, since they turned the model into a decent scouting mech. Since the Fantasia was such a light and thin mech, Ves had very little leeway in modifying its parts without destroying its good points. In contrast, Ves could easily tinker with heavier models, shaving 10% of its mass without sacrificing too much of its defense. After applying modern techniques to the ancient design, he could easily raise the performance of his variant by 2 or 3% compared to its base model. This Fantasia the system provided me is really too skinny. Since he couldn't go for the route of subtraction, he needed to find another way to add value. Ves could easily improve the design by adding additional components. Unfortunately, the system only provided the license of a single component, giving him very little options. The virtual component license the system gifted him came with an overly lengthy name. The creators called it the Gemini Twin Rear Ejection Energy Booster. The complicated component did 3 things at once. First, it allowed a cockpit to eject from the rear in case of emergencies. It provided a fairly large amount of energy storage, allowing mechs to last longer without resupply. Lastly, it provided a large amount of straight-line acceleration with its boosters, though such boosts consumed a lot of energy. Formally, such attributes matched perfectly with the Fantasia 2R's focus on speed. There was only one major snag. The Gemini's dimensions were drastically oversized. The Gemini had been designed to accommodate the first heavy mech in existence, the Megacrab. This mech was a behemoth that required 8 legs and twin cockpits for 2 pilots. Trying to affix the Gemini system to the Fantasia 2R was like trying to put a stuffed backpack onto a clueless toddler. If only I had more assets. I can't do much without more licenses. I'm not good enough to modify the base design extensively. Ves tinkered with the system's designer functionality. Surprisingly, he found it remarkably easy to implement his modifications. The design tools responded to his thoughts alone, cutting back errors resulting from unsteady hands or faulty calculations. The designer's assistance to his work was like adding wings to a tiger. Despite his enjoyment, Ves found it hard to wrap up a finished design in a single day. He reluctantly shut down the Mech Designer System and took care of his needs. He gobbled up a cheap nutrient pack and cuddled his new pet to sleep in an unfamiliar bed. Ves wrestled with the problem for 3 more days. He spent most of the time trying various ways to combine the hefty Gemini add-on to the thin and wispy Fantasia frame. From a total of 17 attempts, he outright failed 15 times, leaving only a couple of barely functional designs. When he projected the design in all of its glory, he felt like finding a hole to burrow into. It looked ridiculous. Ves had attached the Gemini to the rear of the frame. It sounded simple, but the Fantasia's various restrictions made it a tricky problem. The profile of the 2R's lower torso was so thin that the Gemini simply couldn't be attached to that location. He already tried to do so several times. From his many attempts, Ves concluded he could only attach the Gemini onto the upper back or the lower waist. Since placing such a heavy add-on too high would severely unbalance the Fantasia to the point of tipping it over, Ves could only add the Gemini onto the Fantasia's waist. The combination looked obscene. His cheeks turned red as he beheld the model's mock-up. Its only saving grace was that the custom design had improved on some points. Though the mech became heavier and less agile with the addition of such an uneven weight, its straight-line traveling speed rocketed upwards. The pilot also enjoyed a massive increase in safety with the improved cockpit ejection system. It could eject both cockpits at once, one real and one decoy. This provided a marginal benefit in Iron Spirit, as a successful ejection lowered the cost of repairing a defeated mech in the game. Alright system, does my first design make the cut? Scanning design. Simulating performance. Completed. Do you wish to name the design? Let's go with Fantasia 2RE. My variant's rear end is the only thing that's improved. Design evaluation, Fantasia 2RE. Variant name, Fantasia 2RE. Base model, Fantasia 2R. Original manufacturer, Kezia Armaments. Weight classification, medium light. Recommended role, sprinter/harasser. Armor, F. Carrying capacity, F. Aesthetics, A-. Endurance, C+. Energy efficiency, C. Flexibility, D-. Firepower, D+. Integrity, E. Mobility, B+. Spotting, B. X factor, none. Deviance, 23%, performance improvement, 4.5%, overall evaluation, horribly overweight for its intended purpose. The Fantasia 2RE is nevertheless redeemed by its amplified power and forward potential. Its improvement in open terrain and long-distance missions does not outweigh its anemic flexibility and horrible performance in close-quarters combat. The model's unique appearance may appeal to a small subset of pilots. You have received 1 design point for completing an original design. Congratulations on completing the first part of the tutorial. The rewards have been sent to your inventory. You have also received a bonus for exceeding the requirements of the mission. Ves sighed in relief. He had worked hard to merge 2 entirely different things together. While he succeeded on a fluke, he still managed to pull through. Now that he finished this ungodly mission, he could move on and forget this abomination of a mech. He wiped away the projection of the design and opened his inventory. 2 gift-wrapped packages awaited his eager fingers. Ves quickly tapped both icons, letting them unbox together. You have received a virtual license for the following mech, Kezia Armaments Fantasia 2R. You have received a virtual license for the following component, Maxedron Gemini Twin Rear Ejection Energy Booster. Really? You're giving me the same stuff I've been torturing myself for 3 entire days. You have received a new mission. Please read the details in the missions page. Mission, Tutorial Part 2, Your First Sale, Difficulty, F rank, Prerequisites, Completed Tutorial Part 1. Description, you cannot call yourself a proper mech designer if your design isn't used. Please endeavor to sell a mech based on your first design. Reward, 1000 design points. You're setting me up, system. Even if I can find someone stupid enough to buy the 2RE, I still don't have the credits to purchase the raw materials. Iron Spirit doesn't let designers fabricate a virtual mech for free even if I possess the necessary licenses. The game taxed mech designers by charging them for the raw materials. You have forgotten your bonus. Please look at the currency tab in your inventory. A red packet awaited Ves when he switched his view. He tapped it, causing the virtual envelope to unfold into imaginary bills. It eventually landed into a neat stack with the total amount displayed on top. Congratulations for receiving 100,000 bright credits. Ves widened his eyes. Exceeding the expectations of the system provided considerable rewards. With the sudden windfall, he had a lot more options to earn money now. While 100,000 credits might not let him purchase a license for another mech, he could still purchase plenty of cheap components such as armor plating, cooling systems, batteries, and even weapons. Before Ves put his newly gained credits to good use, he first made sure to complete the mission. He uploaded the saved design of the 2RE onto Iron Spirit's virtual workshop. He then spent about 10,000 credits collecting the raw materials required to fabricate the design. While he could spend twice as much to let the game fabricate the design automatically, Ves wanted to save every single credit, so he went for manual assembly. Ves spent 2 days fumbling around the virtual workshop's 3D printer to print all the required parts. He then took 3 more days fumbling around the assembler trying to put all the diverse and heavy parts together. Somehow, Ves felt a little closer to his first creation as he finally clicked the final part together. He even took some time and credits to paint the chassis purple and red. "You're not the prettiest girl, but you're my first." Ves shook his head. "That sounds wrong." While trying to erase the unpleasant image of mech-human romance from his mind, he quickly put the finished model onto the market. He didn't choose to sell the virtual mech for real credits, though the option was available. Practically all low-tier mechs in Iron Spirit were sold in gold, the in-game currency that mech pilots earned when they won matches against their opponents. The market set a minimum price of 1,600 gold, reflecting the cost of raw materials if Ves had paid for them in gold. "I'm not stupid enough to sell it at cost. Let's add 100 gold. My labors has got to be worth something." Just after he finished with the lot, he also checked his user profile. He chose to hide his real name for now. It wouldn't do for his future career in mech design to be tainted with this awful design. He casually set his nickname as Chasing Clouds, as a reference to his home planet and his aspirations. With that chore done, Ves threw the mission to the back of his mind and went to mech section of the market. He browsed all of the available variants of the Fantasia 2R. If he wanted to design a competitive but affordable Fantasia model, he needed to do his research on what market already offered. He could then tailor a list of requirements and scour the market for fitting components. Ves sunk into his work. He fell into the enthusiasm starting his career in mech design. Even if designing virtual mechs for a game didn't bestow him with the qualifications of a real mech designer, he could still polish his basic skills. Once he accomplished a handful of sales, he could purchase better licenses and design better variants. "Still, I can't play with virtual mechs forever. There's no way I can earn enough credits to meet my next interest payment." He needed to earn enough credits to fund the operations of his real mech business. If the expensive fixed cost of purchasing licenses was left out, then he could easily make the deadline. Reality wasn't so kind. Virtual licenses only apply to in-game designs. There's no way I can afford a legitimate production license with my current assets. Actual production licenses came with prohibitive costs and restrictions. For the privilege of using another company's intellectual property, Ves had to pay a high price. He also had to give the original owners a cut of his earnings. Along with the cost of raw materials, profits grew thin. It's impossible to make it without the help of the system. I hope the 2RE is going to sell out quickly, because I have a feeling I'm going to need all the design points I can get. Lucky sauntered over and meowed at Ves. "What's up, buddy?" The cat tugged at V's pants and tried to lead him outside. Curious, Ves followed the mischievous cat outside and spotted something sparkling behind the weeds. Ves came close and picked it up, revealing a green gemstone. Upon realizing its significance, he hurriedly dropped it down. "Even if you're a machine, I'm still not touching your crap." Ves told the cunning cat. He scanned the gem according to the system's instructions. Emerald of minor armor. Increases the durability of a mech's armor plates by 0.5% when installed. For a gem of its size, its effects were heaven-defying. Despite the paltry boost, the gem cost nothing to make. If he kept feeding Lucky the same cheap ore, he could end up with a pile of emeralds. If they all had the same effect, they might accomplish something great if combined. System, if I have 2 of the same gems, do their benefits stack? Of course not. A mech can only benefit from a limited amount of gems. Gemstones that provide the same effects do not provide more benefits when put into the same mech. Every time the system hinted at something amazing, it turned out to be limited. I need to feed my cat something better. Ves muttered and resolved to order something better and have it delivered to his workshop tomorrow, unknown to Ves. On the other side of Cloudy Curtain, a certain 12-year-old potentate sat down in a fully enclosed simulator. He had just finished school and rented a sim pod from the local gaming center downtown. The boy avidly played Iron Spirit ever since he recently finished his basic lessons on mech piloting. It hardly turned him into a qualified pilot, but it allowed him to pass the minimum requirements to finally play the game. Calling himself Shifter 66 in the game, he enjoyed piloting faster mechs. There was something about running in a multi-ton machine that charmed him. Playing the heavier mechs bored him to tears. He preferred to be quick on his feet, pestering enemies and dodging shots rather than slugging it out in a head-on collision. As a 12-year-old, he couldn't lay any claim to greatness, but he thought he possessed a solid foundation in piloting the simplest of one-star mechs. He played a couple of hundred matches, and while he lost most of them, he still managed to put together a few thousand gold for a new purchase. When Shifter 66 visited the game's online market, he somehow wavered his attention to a line of feminine models. A young man like him already started to pay some attention to the girls in his school. He channeled that energy to the graceful models on display. He picked a random direction to explore further, coming upon the old but still fairly popular Fantasia series. While the boy only half-heartedly inspected the models, he made an abrupt stop once the random selection displayed a highly unusual variant. The boy held out his palm, freezing the image and allowing him to look at the model in greater detail. Fantasia 2RE, Tier, 1 star, base model, Fantasia 2R. Purchase price, 1,700 gold. She looks perfect. A more demanding mech pilot might comment that the mech looked horribly out of balance. Any sane pilot might also complain that the added weight of the variant's rear addition served to slow it down to the point of making the mech useless in any short-distance engagements. Shifter 66 on the other hand kept his eyes glued to the rear end. I gotta have it. And so V's first mech got sold. Chapter 4, Behold My Ultimate Move. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Engulfed by the satisfaction of a new purchase, Shifter 66 hopped into the 2R's cockpit. Without even spending time to grow familiar with the modified mech, he entered the arena and initiated a search for an opponent. Shifter 66 wanted to dive right into a battle with his new baby. As a fairly new and unskilled pilot, Shifter 66 naturally got matched against a pool of similarly low-skilled players. Iron Spirit featured a sophisticated matchmaking system, and the lowest segment was the Bronze League. Every potentate who played Iron Spirit started from the Bronze League. Only by winning a sufficient amount of times would one gain the opportunity to promote to the Silver League, which most mech enthusiasts consider it to be the real beginning of the game. That was because the developers enacted a lot of restrictions to the matches taking place in Bronze. Players could only earn a little amount of gold, though they also had few opportunities to lose it due to simplifying repair costs. Matchmaking in the lowest league also didn't cross star systems, which meant that most low-tier players fought against opponents from the same planet. Bronze Leaguers were also limited from purchasing any mechs rated higher than 1 stars, which really frustrated a lot of kids who wanted to dive right into big and modern mechs. As for Shifter 66, he hadn't been exposed to the world of mechs for long. The mechs he already had access to already occupied his full attention. His view changed into a preparatory screen. The game found an opponent for him. After confirming his mech, weapon and map preferences, he waited for his opponent to do the same. After a short wait, the boy's mech landed upon a grassy hill. The first thing he did was to engage his sensors to see if his opponent was in range. One of the few good things about the Fantasia 2R was its fantastic scanning power, courtesy of its hair-like sensor bundle attached to its head. The mech found an energy signature fairly quickly, which meant his opponent wasn't hiding. The boy eagerly commanded his mech to move forward, only to trip and almost fall backwards. His mech's balance fell apart. Ah, what the? Only until now did it sink into him that having a gigantic rear wasn't all that good. He wrestled with his neural interface for several minutes, trying to find a running posture that wouldn't tip him backwards. He finally managed to accomplish a crude stance by bending his mech's torso forwards, which had the unintentional effect of making his rear more pronounced. Who cares, as long as it works? Let's try the booster. Upon activating the Gemini's powerful thrusters, the Fantasia practically rocketed forwards. Only through some haphazard steps did Shifter 66 manage to keep his mech on his feet and vaguely control his direction forward. Woohoo! As the boy further adapted to the mech's forward momentum, he found himself wild with joy. He could practically feel the wind whipping his mech as he casually broke through his personal speed record. Unfortunately, he neglected one thing. His opponent hadn't been twiddling his thumbs. Shifter 66, too bad you're piloting a light mech. My Groenighelmen eat light mechs for breakfast. The player known as Triceratops boasted, he had the wins to back it up. KRH Heavy Industries Groenighelmen models offered a good balance between weight, energy and armor. They generally suffered against heavier mechs, but anything lighter couldn't go through its armor before the GH pulverized them. The GH's design mimicked a gorilla, so it could bend down on all fours and sprint surprisingly fast in a short duration. Triceratops had already seen the blazing energy signature approaching him on his scanners, so he readied his posture to dodge and chase after the lighter mech. He already licked his lips as he imagined his GHS-powered arms tearing the soft Fantasia's frame apart. "Will you walk into my parlor?" said the spider to the fly. However, the Fantasia 2RE ran forward so uncontrollably that Shifter 66 doubted he could even regain control without crashing into the ground. Only until his forward view revealed his opponent's GH model did he realize he couldn't do anything but crash head-on. Unable to even fire his mech's pistol with all the jostling, the boy plainly threw it to the side, instead choosing to draw the Fantasia's default sword from the embedded scabbard in the back. "I don't believe my baby will lose to you." The GH appeared to be frozen in shock, but as the distance dwindled, it regained its composure and crossed its meaty arms forward. The sword glanced off one of the arms, failing to penetrate its thick armor. The forward momentum nonetheless allowed it to travel forwards and pierce the GH's chest. The armor yielded helplessly, letting the sword cut deep into the mech and slice through important systems and cabling. The GH lost 35% of its energy and all of its weapons on its left side. An even larger collision followed. The rest of the Fantasia's frame slammed forward, dealing more damage to the lighter mech than the GH due to the differences in mass. The Fantasia's upper torso disintegrated from the impact, shards and other debris flying in every direction. Its head crushed into a pancake against the GH's torso, somehow barreling past the heavier mech's armor and penetrating through the cockpit embedded deep within. Triceratops practically had a fright when his view screen burst apart. He hastily commanded his remaining functioning arm to toss the immobilized Fantasia from his partially crippled mech. "Get off me!" The feminine mech crashed against the ground face down with its rear pointing upwards. Triceratops had no time to do a detailed damage assessment. Instead he lumbered his mech over to the fallen frame of his opponent's mech and aimed his arm cannon. While the pilot didn't recognize the Gemini module attached to the Fantasia's rear, he nonetheless recognized it was an essential component, unable to fire. Ammunition feed disrupted. The GHS pilot cursed and abandoned his ranged options. He readied his fist for a punch. Shifter 66 frantically tried to command his wrecked mech to move. "Damn it, why isn't she moving? This is the end of the road for you, punk." Just as the GH landed the punch, a hatch on the Gemini blew apart. It revealed a hard-shelled cockpit, which ejected instantly from the Fantasia with substantial thrust. While it didn't travel with the force of an armor-piercing shell, it nevertheless possessed enough force to smash apart the GH's ramshackle torso armor and pound its pilot into meat sauce. Exhaust smoke spurted out of the Gemini's gaping cavity. Burn marks littered the immobilized Fantasia and the surrounding foliage as the decapitated Groenighelmen mech collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. Winner, Shifter 66. "Huh." The boy groggily wondered as the rewards from the win poured in. "It worked. I won." That it had been a complete fluke to eject the redundant extra cockpit. In the final moments, the boy pretty much pressed every neural button he could find, trying to get his mech to do something other than being a sitting duck. Ejecting the cockpit was one of the last options left. Ha 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 ha. I knew I wouldn't disappoint. Shifter 66 spent a significant fraction of his newly earned gold to instantly repair his mech. More expensive mechs required manual repairs or payment of real credits to get it done instantly. Fortunately, Iron Spirit didn't bother to milk excessive fees from its beginners, so the boy had nothing to worry about. He threw himself back into the arena. Triceratops, who turned out to be a boy just a year older than Shifter 66, simply sat stunned in the simulator. He couldn't believe he got done in by an ejected cockpit. He loaded the replay of the last match, fast-forwarding to the final moment before slowing down the playback to leave him with plenty of time to watch. The same incomprehensible action happened again, just in a different perspective. Triceratops chose to watch the event from the side. He could see the immobilized Fantasia billowing out ejection fire and smoke from its battered rear module. Its left hatch blew apart, making room for the abruptly accelerating metal shell that protected the empty cockpit. Normally, any ejecting cockpit followed an upwards trajectory as soon as it left the chassis of the mech that held it. If Triceratops had just been a little more patient, he could have let the cockpit fly harmlessly in sky. Instead he could only watch as his past self moved the GH into punching range of the Fantasia, thereby exposing its damaged torso to his opponent's crazy strike. He pretty much impaled himself onto the enemy's lance. This isn't real. This stupid mech looks so dumb and ugly. Who the hell made this mech? This Shifter 66 must be trolling if he's bored enough to bring such a mech into the arena. Triceratops opened a window showing the statistics of the Fantasia 2RE. The numbers made little sense to him, as he hadn't been studying mechs very long. Following the link to the seller called Chasing Clouds, he found out next to nothing as the account had been created very recently, with no other mechs for sale. The seller's privacy settings caused Triceratops' impromptu investigation a dead end. Well, if I can't find anything out about the seller, then let's check Mr. Shifter 66. I want to see whether you're a pro playing on an alt account. Though Triceratops spent his time in the Bronze League, he occasionally fought against opponents with a much higher apparent skill level on occasion. These monsters mostly consisted of expert mech pilots with a successful career in the upper leagues of the game. Sometimes expert pilots with real-life mech combat experience also took the game for a spin, causing many helpless Bronze Leaguers to cry helplessly as they got beat up in turns. When Triceratops loaded into Shifter 66's next match, he already saw that the battle had reached the peak. The Fantasia 2R had difficulty catching his much lighter opponent, who happened to be piloting a Fantasia 1R, as the predecessor model. The 1R lagged in several areas compared to the 2R. Nonetheless, the 1R the opponent piloted was the stock model, granted him a decisive advantage in agility and short-ranged mobility. The forest environment also bogged Shifter 66 down. His 2RE couldn't find a clearing to put his substantial boosters to good use. Without the extra speed afforded by the boosters, his 2R had been rendered into an overweight mech, clumsily trying to turn its sluggish frame in the direction of his flitting opponent. The 1R's pilot played it smart, Triceratops noted. The 1R seemed to be wary of Shifter 66's mech boosters. It neither faced the 2RE directly in the front and behind, using its superiority in lateral movement to keep the mech to the sides. The boy could only grit his teeth as he endured the light laser blasts digging into his Fantasia's rear armor. He only managed to endure until now because the enemy's Fantasia lacked the capacity to field heavier firepower. However, just its basic pistol possessed enough punch to eventually slag the 2RE's armor into a puddle. Shifter 66's own pistol had already been shot to pieces and he could only try to make pot shots with his heavier but unwieldy marksman rifle. You asshole! Are you a monkey or a man? Stand still for a moment. That the 1R ignored the complaint, and resolutely kept up its dodging. The boy knew he couldn't let this merry-go-round continue, so he activated his boosters and just rocketed into the trees. His mech crashed through the trees with minor difficulty, though he accumulated internal structure damage with each tree felled. He couldn't keep this up for long. Nonetheless, Shifter 66 managed to retake the initiative. The 1R's pilot panicked. Allowing the 2RE to build up distance meant exposing him to powerful laser fire. He hastily followed after the rocketing mech, inadvertently lining up right behind the 2RE's Gemini system. "Behold my ultimate move!" Shifter 66 yelled as he slammed his fist on the secondary ejection button. The Fantasia's twin cockpit whooshed forward from the Gemini model in another fiery blast. This time the cockpit kept up a straightforward trajectory. Changing that setting was the only thing the boy prepared in advance before he dove into his next match. The cockpit rocketed backwards with a speedy but avoidable trajectory. The 1R could easily step sideways if it kept its chassis in the correct stance. Unfortunately, the stock model chased after the 2RE with full speed, allowing for very little leeway to dodge immediately. By the time the 1R managed to shift its torso, the blazing cockpit slammed its right shoulder to pieces. The Fantasia 1R massed much less than the GH, so the impact this time resulted in much heavier damage even though it occurred off-center. Practically half its shoulder and the entire arm blew apart. The battered cockpit flew off in a random direction with the Fantasia's gun stuck in its shell. "Huh, you're mine now," thought the boy was ecstatic to see his gamble succeed. He stopped the boosters, causing his mech to abruptly slow down and trip. It took an embarrassingly long time to get his mech up its feet, but the kid felt too flushed with success to feel any bother about it. The 2RE lumbered back to the crashed 1R model. The loss of a shoulder and an arm shouldn't have crippled a Fantasia 1R. Most of its essential systems rested in its waist, so as long as it possessed 2 functional legs, it could still outplay the 2RE. The pilot eventually lacked the skill to compensate for its damage, as all he could accomplish so far was to run around in circles. The boy stopped his approach and raised his mech's rifle. The beams had a little difficulty keeping up a consistent aim, but the sheer number of shots succeeded in punching through the 1R's poor chassis. Winner, Shifter 66. Ha ha ha. The boy laughed as he raised his fist. He had won again, proving him that his gold was well spent. Though clumsy, his mech held a few surprises, and anyone who thought he was an easy target would get a nasty present. Triceratops on the other hand cursed Shifter 66's luck. He felt a little glad that he wasn't the only pilot who fell for the 2RE's trick. He kept spectating Shifter 66 as he mindlessly dove into the arena. Subsequent matches proved that the boy had celebrated too early. Matchmaking had adjusted Shifter 66's opponents after he kept relying on cheap tricks. These slightly more seasoned pilots recognized the Gemini add-on and knew what it could do. Though they laughed at the 2RE's rear-heavy appearance, they still treated their enemy seriously. The lighter mechs generally ran rings around Shifter 66, taking small bites at a time and leaving him with little opportunity to strike back. The heavier mechs proved to be easier opponents for him, as they were less capable of dodging his newly invented ultimate move. Only the heaviest 1-star mechs could shrug off the damage caused by the sudden collision. Remembering that he had to go home for dinner, the boy eventually called it a day. With a couple more wins than losses in his record, the potentate felt that buying the Fantasia 2RE was one of the best decisions in his life. Before he logged off, he added the designer in his address book. Oblivious to the potentate, Ves looked at his system's notification with a puzzled expression. The mission finished that quickly? I can't believe there's someone stupid enough to buy the mech I put on sale. Lucky concurred with a meow while shaking its mechanical behind in V's direction. The young man playfully picked up the pet and cuddled him against his chest. At least the stuff you crap out can be sold. Now that he finally received some design points, Ves switched back to the shop and browsed its catalog with greater attention. The previous time he just took a casual look, choosing to ignore the more unrealistic entries as pure nonsense. Now that he swept his eyes past them again, Ves widened his eyes. If the system is really capable of doing this with design points, then meeting the next interest payment is in my grasp. Ves reached an unconscious threshold in his mentality. He had always been a little bit skeptical of the system which suddenly intruded in his life. Now though, he felt ready to embrace it with all its oddities. While some designers counted on their fancy degrees to start their careers, others threw money and connections at the problem. Ves only needed the system to pave his way to the top. You have received a new mission. Mission, Mission, Tutorial Part 3, Mass Production, Difficulty, F Rank, Prerequisites, Completed Tutorial Part 2. Description. A mech designer should not be content at selling a model once. Real designers must have flocks of people begging to purchase their products. Please sell 100 virtual mechs of your own creation within a month. Reward: 1 random 10-year combat mech production license. The system screwed him for real this time. How am I supposed to sell 100 of them in a month? Chapter 5, Investment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Ves finished freaking out, he read the mission description again and understood he missed out an important detail. The mission demanded that he sell virtual mechs of his own creation. What the phrasing implied that he wasn't stuck with trying to peddle the ungainly Fantasia 2 or E to a group of idiots, as long as Ves spent the month designing a couple of decent variants and promoting them on the local net, he might reach the sales figure. 100 sales a month might sound like peanuts to established virtual mech designers, but meeting it remained a hefty challenge to a nobody like Ves. I can't physically build all 100 models by hand. Ves concluded as he formulated a basic plan. At this tier, pilots don't demand too much from their models. It'll be fine if I outsource the manufacturing to the game. The game made it easy to automate production of any design as long as the owner had fabricated it in the virtual workshop by hand at least once. It came with hefty downsides if Ves decided to enlist this service. The cost of production doubled and the quality of the finished mechs took a substantial hit. These were deliberately set by the BSBH Corporation in order to avoid the mech market being dominated by a small number of professional producers. The biggest challenge was to design a custom mech that was still worth buying even after its quality took a dive when put into mass production. It had to offer at least one substantial advantage over the competition. He'd never be able to accomplish such a design without help. Luckily, the bright credits and the design points he earned from the previous tutorial missions could help him out a lot, if he spent them wisely. Despite the tight 1-month deadline, Ves felt highly motivated. The reward for completion mentioned that he could receive a production license for a real mech. Licensing costs for outdated mechs were modest, but nobody bought antiques except for special purposes. The licenses for current mechs started with prices ranging from tens of millions of bright credits, not an easy amount for Ves to pull out of nowhere. The system taking care of the license reduced his projected spending by at least 80%, only the randomness of the reward kept him a little vigilant. He hadn't received much luck with the system so far, so he felt there might be a possibility he might receive a useless model. Any design over 100 years old were too obsolete to be of use in the battlefield. While some mech designers have found a niche by refurbishing classic models with modern materials and technology, it had never been a large enough market. Perhaps the system's randomness might also screw him in the other direction. Ves could receive a model that was too high-end, one that cost billions in materials alone to produce. His small-scale second-hand 3D printer might not even have the capabilities to process all of the exotic materials involved with the production of the parts. If he was particularly unlucky, some big players might even wonder why his small mech boutique possessed such an expensive production license in the first place. Ves shook his head and got down to earth. First, let's spend the design points. They're not much, but enough for a total beginner like me. He had received a windfall of a 1000 DP for completing the tutorial mission, but he couldn't rely on earning the same amount going forward. He only earned 1 DP for completing a successful design, and another point for selling it. At this pace, he'd face a considerable drought of DP in the near future. The points aren't doing anything sitting in my status. I might as well spend them as I desperately need to improve my basic capabilities. His recent experience in designing a mech variant and putting it on the market helped put his skill level in perspective. Ves had a better what his good and bad points are in comparison to other inexperienced mech designers who sold their work in iron spirit. Status: Name, Ves Larkinson. Profession, Novice Mech Designer. Specializations: None. Design points, 1012. Attributes: Strength, 0.6. Dexterity, 0.7. Endurance, 0.6. Intelligence, 1.2. Creativity, 0.3. Concentration, 1. Neural aptitude, F. Skills, Assembly, Novice, Business, Apprentice, Computer Science, incompetent, mathematics, incompetent, mechanics, apprentice. Metallurgy, apprentice, physics, novice, evaluation, a loser on the right track. His status hardly changed since the last time he viewed it. Only his concentration had improved by 0.1. While he could work hard to raise his attributes and skills on his own, the system could do the same. While he could have bought more equipment or pets from the system, what he really needed right now was to improve his own capabilities. Ves had enough sense not to rely too much on external help. After browsing the shop and the skill tree for a couple of hours, Ves formed a spending strategy based on the prices set by the system. Attributes formed the basics. Not all of them were useful, but intelligence, concentration and creativity had a pretty big influence in V's future limits. His creativity especially appeared deficient, something he could confirm firsthand as any casual drawing he sketched would draw looks of disgust. Ves wanted to raise his 3 core attributes substantially, but if he did that, he might not get an immediate benefit for the amount he spent. They were just too big and vague. Developing his skill tree provided immediate results. He could improve practical sub-skills like increasing his proficiency when working with the 3D printer or become more proficient in balancing a mech's weight distribution. A lot of the fancier and impressive skills cost millions of DP to unlock and required the acquisition of other skills first. Those goodies were still too far away for the moment. Ves spotted plenty of low-hanging fruit that could improve the value of his designs for a modest amount of DP. Frankly, Ves was spoiled for choice. But if he wanted to accomplish 100 sales within a month and earn enough credits to meet his interest payment, he needed to ignore the extras and focus on the money makers. Spreading himself out in too many areas of interest would dilute his gains, resulting in a marginal increase in the value of his designs. An improvement of 1% in every category was not as eye-catching as a jump in 10% in a single criteria. I need to think deep about this. My choices here will affect the rest of my career. Many star designers gain their fame from standing out in a particular aspect. Raul, the armorer, Mendoza was a genius in the area of developing new armor alloys and employing them in ingenious ways in his mech designs. The mechs his company manufactured supposedly boasted the highest survival rate. Another star that Ves admired was Jonathan Rasmussen, known as Apollo. He only developed one line of mechs in his entire life, Sunburst series. Each of the Sunbursts incorporated fire attacks in its arsenal, and they grew increasingly refined with the development of every new generation. In 50 years, Apollo had introduced the Sunburst as a quirky but niche mech into the pinnacle of heat-based mechs. Naturally, there were also stars who went in the opposite direction. The polymath, Claire Gramza possessed one of the most formidable intellects in human space. Any field she put her mind into, from physics to computer science, she reached the top. She was also notoriously prolific in pushing out designs, many of them incorporating the latest advances in whatever field of science she was studying at the moment. Ves knew he wasn't a genius who could spread his attention everywhere, so he had no intentions of imitating the polymath. He'd be better off imitating the previous 2 examples and pick 1 or 2 things he could do better. He always did better in the mechanical side of things. His skill proficiency and his status screen reflected this. Ves browsed the skill tree and picked a couple of interesting choices: 3D printer proficiency I, 200 DP, jury rigging I, 150 DP, lightweight armor optimization I, 200 DP, speed tuning I, 200 DP. His choices reflected a bias on light mechs. This was a practical decision reflecting his economic circumstances. Outside of games, heavier mechs were mainly employed in professional and military outfits, groups who generally did business with the major arms manufacturers and disdained taking orders from small, one-man mech boutiques. Lighter mechs required less raw materials to build up and the low-end production licenses were dirt cheap. The public market consisted mostly of less formal outfits who try to save costs everywhere, so they widely use light and medium weighing mechs whenever they could get away with it. Ves had little to worry about running out of buyers if he went with this route. He spent much of his remaining points on boosting his creativity attribute. It was a deliberate choice on his part. Though increasing intelligence might provide him with a better mind, it cost a lot more points to improve since it was already relatively high. His creativity on the other hand was severely dysfunctional. Designing mechs was not just a science, but also an art. As Ves bought zero point 7 points worth of creativity, he immediately felt the benefits as the amount of ideas bouncing around his mind had skyrocketed. He looked around and saw the world in a slightly different way. Everything looked beautiful, and each object had its charm. Lucky looked especially appealing, having been modeled after a cat but retaining its mechanical origins quite clearly. Ves felt as if he had been seeing the world in black and white for so long and only now did he start to see color. This major boost of creativity is really making a difference. I haven't realized that it has always held back my ambitions. Status, name, Ves Larkinson, profession, novice mech designer, specializations, none, design points, 12. Attributes, strength, 0.6. Dexterity, 0.7. Endurance, 0.6. Intelligence, 1.2. Creativity, 1. Concentration, 1. Neural aptitude, F. Skills, assembly, novice, 3D printer proficiency I. Business, apprentice. Computer science, incompetent, mathematics, incompetent, mechanics, apprentice, jury rigging I, speed tuning I. Metallurgy, apprentice, physics, novice, lightweight armor optimization. I. Evaluation, someone who likes skinny. The results of his spending put Ves in a good mood. He was itching to engage the designer and let his creativity loose once he finished selecting a couple of virtual licenses in the game. Just before he visited the in-game market, Ves first looked up his 2RE variant and chose to let Iron Spirit take care of the manufacturing. The minimum price rose to 3,200 gold, which was still not too pricey but not the best deal available on the market. This time he left the price alone, as he wasn't intending to earn a profit this time. He just wanted to reach 100 sales as soon as possible. Not that anyone is stupid enough to throw 3,200 gold on an ugly mech like the 2RE. Now that I've raised several of my skills, I can see the flaws from its crude design. I'm really embarrassed I actually built such an abomination. Still, a sale was a sale, so Ves hadn't deleted the design from his account. Ves spent the next few hours scouring the components section of the market. His new sub-skills helped weed out the awful parts from his selection. His improved creativity allowed him to consider unconventional combinations. Though difficult to implement, he might be able to forcibly cobble them together with his jury rigging skill. He eventually settled for purchasing the virtual licenses of a couple of good quality 1-star components, Astoria Experimental Flight System, 25,000 bright credits, Fayette ECM MK. 7,000 bright credits, Red-Eye Assisted Aim Module, 9,999 bright credits, MTTR Removable Battery Pack, 3,000 bright credits, Harkinix Lite DMR version 3, 19,999 bright credits, Festive Cloud Generator, 5,000 bright credits, Mirren, 21 Ultralight Armor Plating, 10,000 bright credits. Almost 80,000 bright credits exited his spending account as Ves finalized his purchases. Parting with half of his newly gained credits hurt, but he consoled himself for making the necessary investments. The component licenses he chose performed exceptionally in the 1-star range. Their high prices also ensured that not many of V's competitors incorporated the components in their own designs. The 1-star mechs ultimately served as training wheels for new potentates, so it wasn't worth investing too much when one had access to much better mechs in a few years. Overall, the parts Ves had licensed all revolved around enhancing flight. The early mechs such as the Fantasia lacked flight options due to the immaturity of flight technology back those ages. The Astoria flight system had been invented 100 years after the introduction of the Fantasia, and featured lackluster power, short flight capacity and an oversized wing profile that was easy to damage, but it did the job. It had been one of the first successful modules to allow for mechs to fly in standard planetary conditions, thus introducing a new dimension in mech battles. Let's get to work. I have to integrate them into a single coordinated platform. Ves opened the system's designer and loaded the stock Fantasia 2R model in his virtual workspace. He loaded the components he just bought one by one and spent hours integrating them properly into the Fantasia 2R's frame. It was never as simple as bolting them on. Each placement needed careful judgment and tedious work. The Astoria wings came first, its huge skeletal wing bones flaring impressively outwards, making the Fantasia appear like a fallen angel. Its combination of thrusters and anti-gravity systems meant the wings had been designed to maximize its surface area. This also made it easy to damage, as any casual hit could reduce the component's performance and ground the mech. To combat this vulnerability, VES chose to carefully bulk the Astoria's limbs with the Miran 21 ultralight armor plating. This was a delicate and error-prone job, one that could easily reduce the flight system's efficiency by a drastic amount. He ultimately had to spend an entire day trying to get it right. He placed the Fayette electronic countermeasure or ECM over the left eye, making sure to align it so the short antenna extended from the Fantasia's ear. The ECM ensured that automated and aim-assisted systems had a harder time tracking the mech. It worked particularly well against guided missiles, as long as they were from the same tier. The red eye-assisted aim module had been placed over the other eye. Its red, gleaming lens giving the Fantasia a menacing look. The red eye performed well against mechs without ECM, helping pilots keep their aim onto enemy mechs once they acquired their targets. Aim assistance was practically essential in all low-tier flying mechs. Pilots simply couldn't aim steadily enough if they jerked around in the air. All of these systems drained energy, especially the flight system. The modules came with their own energy storage, but as one-star parts they lacked endurance compared to modern alternatives. This required VES to place rectangular MTTR battery packs anywhere he could fit on the Fantasia without overburdening the frame. The only place he could fit more battery packs was at the front upper torso. He papered over the vulnerable packs with additional ultralight armor plating. He placed most of them around the waist, making the chassis look like it wore an overfilled tool belt. The great thing about the MTTR was that the packs were disposable, allowing pilots to eject them once they were drained of energy. He covered them up with Miran 21 armor plates to make them less prone to damage. Finally he added in an unconventional but potentially effective system, the festive cloud generator. A specialty of Cloudy Curtain, VES had visited many mech shows on his home planet that used the colorful cloud generator to create patterns in the sky. Though its bright colors hardly helped with stealth, VES thought that it might help obscure the Fantasia and its vulnerable wings if placed on the rear just underneath the Astoria. Once he had integrated all of these components, he set the Fantasia's default weaponry to be a bog-standard combat knife and the new Harkonix light DMR. Not quite a sniper rifle nor a standard assault rifle, the Harkonix nevertheless offered precision at a generous firing rate. The rifle's hefty power requirements necessitated a power coupling with the mech, meaning that if the Fantasia dropped the DMR, it couldn't be fired anymore. Once VES brought all of the newly bought parts together, the new variant looked nothing like its stock model. Though it gained a generous amount of mass, the new Fantasia also appeared like a predator, capable of striking down any interlopers from afar. He enjoyed putting this variant together. He had been able to flex his improved creativity and newly acquired sub-skills to do a much better job of integrating the parts than if he was still a fresh graduate. This is hardly a Fantasia anymore, so let's call you a Fantasia 2 or Seraphim. Before VES submitted the design for approval, he painted over the entire frame in Cloudy Curtain's national colors. It made the Fantasia appear as if it was born in the skies. Design evaluation, Fantasia 2 or Seraphim. Variant name, Fantasia 2 or Seraphim. Base model, Fantasia 2 or. Original manufacturer, Kezia Armaments. Weight classification, light, recommended role, aerial marksman, armor, D. Carrying capacity, F. Aesthetics, A. Endurance, D. Energy efficiency, D. Flexibility, C+, firepower, C. Integrity, F+, mobility, A. Spotting, B. X factor, F. Deviance, 44%. Performance improvement, 17%. Overall evaluation, the Fantasia 2 or Seraphim features a superior aerial performance at a horrible cost. Its performance in close-ranged combat has been sacrificed for powerful long-ranged firepower. The mech is able to outperform its opponents as long as it has energy to spare, which isn't much. The Seraphim further shines out due to its attractive appeal. You have received 50 design points for completing an original design with a performance improvement of over 10%. Ves whooped into the air with a cheer. He actually did it. He completed a custom design that outperformed the base model significantly. Sure, he overspent way too much to achieve such a boost, but it nonetheless propelled his Seraphim in the top tier of custom fantasias. Chapter 6, Taking Flight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Ves uploaded the new Seraphim design on the market, he quickly bought the required. Unlike the 2RE, the Seraphim boasted a much more complex integration of disparate components. A working model demanded that Ves take much better care of the fabrication and assembly of parts. His increased proficiency in working with the 3D printer helped him in printing out parts with less deviation than normal, which further assisted him in making the assembly occur without many problems. Ves received a nasty fright once he saw the final bill for the frame. I already have to spend 4,400 gold on the raw materials alone. If I let Iron Spirit automate its production, then the final price will at least be doubled. A 1-star mech that cost 8,800 gold to buy was an absolute luxury in the game. It took an average player months to build up such a fortune. Ves decided to add a credit price to his model. Since it's a high-performing model, I can at least feel justified if I charge real money for the Seraphim. He set a modest price of 3,300 bright credits per model, which was already at the floor of what the game asked of him. If he sold his mechs with bright credits, the cost of materials and manufacturing would also be deducted from the same currency, so in essence Ves earned no profits at this price. 3,300 bright credits still put the Seraphim well into the premium bracket. Ves felt a little nervous of competing against more well-designed models that mech pilots could acquire at this price. I don't believe my Fantasia will do too badly. It's one of the few flight-capable mechs in this tier after all. That's got to be worth something. Ves refused to sit on his laurels after he finished putting the Seraphim on sale. There were thousands of customized Fantasia models and millions of other 1-star variants in the market. Hundreds of new creations popped up every day, so Ves had to go the extra mile in order to make his product stand out from the competition. First he visited all the major mech enthusiast board on the galactic net and shamelessly made some posts exaggerating the Seraphim's performance. He then visited Cloudy Curtain's virtual mech pilot community and exhorted the Seraphim as a patriotic purchase, as it integrated the planet's famed festive cloud generator. Though his online postings might generate a minor amount of attention, there was really too much crap on the net these days. His pathetic attempts at advertisement might as well be a drop in the ocean. After considering the issue for a few minutes, Ves decided to take the plunge and enlisted a short-term advertising service from the game. Iron Spirit featured a sprawling market, and the developers recognized that some designers wanted their own creations to stand out. So Iron Spirit's marketplace offered several methods in which to make a model stand out, such as putting them on top of search results, or putting them on display in the virtual environment. The cheapest option started at 1,000 bright credits a day, and Ves bought a package deal of 9,000 credits for 10 days of sporadic advertisement. This only left Ves with 11,000 credits in his accounts, which almost turned him into a pauper. Making money comes later. Right now, it's best for me to complete the system's mission. I'll earn much more once I receive a real production license. Peddling thousands of digital mechs in a game just can't compare to making a single sale in the real universe. After finishing his publication, Ves had plenty of time left, so he got back to the designer to come up with cheaper variants. His experience with modifying the Fantasia model helped him figure the areas that could be improved. Let's start with up-armoring the chassis. As Ves tinkered with his designs, someone else on Cloudy Curtain logged into Iron Spirit and checked out V's profile as a habit. Oh. Triceratops widened his eyes. Chasing Clouds finally uploaded a new mech. Let's see if it looks stupider than his first creation. The teenager figured the new Fantasia might sport an exaggerated chest or something. What he encountered instead was a marvelous visage. The highly customized mech looked like a Fantasia on steroids. Its wide, stretching wings occasionally poked out of the celestial clouds that emitted from the rear. The rainbow coloration offered little utility in combat, but it made the Fantasia look as if it stepped out of heaven. Only the custom mech's menacing red eye and lengthy marksman rifle gave the model some teeth. Triceratops quickly figured out the mech had been made for sniping in the air. Aerial sniping was one of the most difficult specializations a pilot could focus on, but at least this mech included a built-in aim assist module. So it's called a Seraphim, huh? It sure turned the Fantasia into something incredible. The mech excelled in both looks and performance. Though Triceratops intended to specialize in piloting medium-weight mechs, he nonetheless grew interested in buying the Seraphim and adding it to his mech stables. His eyes scrolled down the specifications sheet in admiration before ending up at the prices. PFFF. What? 3,300 credits. That's a rip-off. At least the gold price looks more reasonable. Unfortunately, 4,400 gold was out of his price range. He hadn't outgrown his Groenighalmen mech yet. Triceratops calmed down and stopped his impulsive urge to purchase the Seraphim. If he knew that the gold price of the Seraphim doubled once the handcrafted model was sold, he'd likely spit his lunch. As for paying in credits, a kid like him only had 50 credits in pocket money, far too insufficient to splurge on an in-game item. His parents would scold him for wasting so much money. This mech is out of my price range. There's no way I can buy this luxury model. But I think I know someone who can. Let me check my friend list. Triceratops, yo buddy, are you available? The Seventh Snake, what up? Triceratops, I found a new mech variant on the market. I think you'll be interested. The Seventh Snake, it must be something weird if you're taking the time to tell me about it. Give me a name, I'll check it out. Triceratops, Fantasia 2 or Seraphim. The Seventh Snake, damn, you're right. This is the best Fantasia I've seen up till now. But what is up with the price? I could buy a top-performing flight mech with all that gold and still have some left for some bling. Triceratops, all of those mechs look like birds or underfed men. This is one of the few Fantasias with a decently integrated flight system. You can even do some cool tricks with the cloud generator. Just give it a spin, man. The Seventh Snake, why are you trying to push me this mech anyway? Do you know chasing clouds? Triceratops, nah. I lost an arena match against another custom Fantasia by the same designer. I've been keeping my eye on him since then since he managed to come up with something stupid. The Seventh Snake, okay, let me see his profile, the Fantasia 2 RE, right? It's the only other model on his account. Oh, Triceratops, the Seventh Snake, ha 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 XD, Triceratops, yeah, I know. The Seventh Snake, you've got to send me the replay footage of that match. Triceratops, forget about it. The Seventh Snake, play us. Triceratops, I'll send it to you if you'll buy the Seraphim. The Seventh Snake, sure. Done. Triceratops checked his friend's public profile and indeed, the angelic mech had just been added to his mech stable. He was sure the Seventh Snake bought the mech with credits. Earning gold in the Bronze League was hard. The snake could afford to waste a couple of thousand credits away with a rich daddy. Having no other choice, Triceratops sent the replay file to his friend. A few minutes went by, the Seventh Snake, XD, no wonder you're so obsessed. You got pounded by someone's ass. That last moment is literally gold. Triceratops, please don't laugh too much. I'm going to have to live with it for the rest of my life. The Seventh Snake, you should show this replay in class, everyone will love it. Triceratops, ugh, not anytime soon. Are you entering a queue already or what? I want to see your Seraphim in action. The Seventh Snake, alright. As a bona fide second-generation rich kid, the Seventh Snake lived a comfortable life. He possessed decent looks, a wide circle of friends and did well in school. Other than the frequent absence of his overworked parents, he lacked nothing in his life, being a potentate was just the icing on the cake. His parents hired retired mech pilots to tutor him in piloting ever since the government revealed he was one of the 3.5%. Naturally, they didn't hope he make a career out of it. Just the status of reservist was enough to make the both of them crazy, since it offered many generous benefits in daily life, which included subsidies and priority access to universities. His parents even bought him a personalized mech simulator so he could play Iron Spirit at home. Right now, the matchmaking finished finding an opponent for the seventh snake. Curious, he checked his opponent's profile while the game loaded the battlefield, player profile, nickname, Cassie the Fox, League, Bronze, wins/losses/draws, 307/276/0. Equipped mech, Orion Incorporated Excelsior EE, 26, stock. Weight classification, heavy. A girl, eh. The Excelsior is a tough nut to crack. Many players rank the Excelsior as one of the top 51-star stock mechs in Iron Spirit. Its four heavy legs provided remarkable stability while its centaur-like torso boasted 20% more armor than a bipedal equivalent. What made the mech so infamous was that it had been crammed with energy weapons. It boasted enough lasers to tear anything in the air to shreds. Only the mech's slow speed, average target acquisition and terrible heat venting issues stopped it from reaching the top 10. Lucky enough, the map selected by the game featured lots of canyons amid a desert environment. The Excelsior wouldn't be able to find a pool of water to assist it in venting any excessive heat. Once the match started, the seventh snake instantly engaged his Astoria wings and ascended the canyon, finally landing on top of a plateau with a commanding view. Though his flight had followed a jerky and unstable trajectory, it was nonetheless impressive that he maintained control of his mech despite flying the mech for the first time. The Astoria is a lot rougher than the flight systems I trained with. There's no stabilization. Regular reservists only learned how to control a flying mech in their last years in class. The seventh snake had a head start due receiving plenty of tutoring. Otherwise he wouldn't have been confident in purchasing and using the Seraphim in battle while his friend Triceratops spectated this match. You must be watching me, right? Let me give you a show then. The Fantasia 2 or Seraphim extended its hair sensors in every direction as it engaged in active scanning. This revealed its position, but the seventh snake didn't mind it as he knew the Excelsior couldn't reach this high up. After a few seconds, his radar displayed a new blip. So she's not even hiding. Good, saves me the trouble of combing the valleys. Cassie the Fox chose to make her stand in an open field with only a few cliffs and canyons nearby. Her choice reflected a desire to keep all angles clear so her lasers would have a clear line of fire. Her Excelsior's quadruple legs had already dug into the soil, increasing the mech's stability. Cassie the Fox wanted to slug it out. I'm not afraid of you. The seventh snake roared as he lifted off and flew towards his opponent, toggling on the cloud generator in order to announce his passage. The Excelsior had been caught off guard by the majestic entrance. The Seraphim immediately opened fire, its DMR spitting out compressed energy bolts at a telling frequency. Some of them even landed glancing blows on the Excelsior despite the Seraphim's speedy flight. The enemy pilot regained her composure upon getting his. She raised her Excelsior's arms and released a cascade of laser fire from its built-in barrels. The Seraphim's ECM helped muzzle the accuracy of the lasers, but the barrage of fire overwhelmed his awkward dodging. You annoying fly! Cassie the Fox screeched in the public channel. It doesn't matter how many gimmicks you use, I'll still swat you down. Try hitting me more than a couple times before you boast. The girl realized she was overreacting and calmed down, slowing her fire rate. Though it meant her chances of hitting the Seraphim went down, it also delayed the time when her mech grew too hot to continue firing lasers. The battle between the two mechs progressed into a battle of attrition. The heavier mech relied on its prodigious armor to tank the DMR's punishing blows, while the Seraphim relied on its aerial superiority and ECM to avoid most of the lasers shot in its way. The Excelsior would be at a disadvantage once its heat had built up too much, but the Seraphim would also fall into trouble once its energy reserves ran out. Flying wasted a lot of energy. The Seraphim constantly ejected energy packs from its chassis as the seventh snake kept dodging in the air. The mech had painted half the sky with streaks of rainbow clouds, as if it was transforming the battlefield into a piece of heaven. All of that would stop once the Seraphim exhausted its energy. Without flight and a working rifle, the light mech was a sitting duck. It's so unfair to let heavy mechs fight against light ones. This really is the Seraphim's worst matchup. Heavier mechs offered more space for armor, energy, cooling and weapons. They always won battles of attrition due to their higher overall capacity. The Seraphim would run out of energy long before the Excelsior could no longer handle the heat. Something had to change. He stopped firing his DMR and detached the energy feed before letting it drop. Instead, he retrieved the combat knife from its holster and held it with both hands. The Seraphim flipped in the air and proceeded to accelerate downward, knife slicing the air as it thrust the weapon forward. "Are you crazy?" Cassie the Fox asked in surprise, though she was whooping in joy as she narrowed her firing angle. Now that the Seraphim dove towards her Excelsior, it became a lot easier to hit. Several beams of superheated light landed upon the slimmer mech's head, ruining both the ECM and aim assist. This made it easier for her to land her shots. However, most of the lasers hitting the torso seemed to burn only redundant armor. Only the hits against the wings of the flight system achieved some real damage. Fortunately, the Seraphim pretty much relied on momentum to dive downwards, so the loss in downward thrust hardly affected the mech by now. Its cloud generator kept pumping out a colorful stream of vapor, making it seem as if the falling Seraphim was the embodiment of God's punishment. The distance between the two mechs closed rapidly, and just before the two mechs collided, both pilots moved. The Excelsior wasn't stupid to just stand there and take the hit. Cassie the Fox redirected her emergency power towards the Excelsior's legs, allowing it to jump to the side with a surprising spring. The Seraphim already anticipated such a move. With only 100 meters to go, the feminine mech made another aerial flip, adjusting its fall along the enemy's trajectory while pointing the mech's heels downwards. The two collided in a massive crash with an impact that echoed across the canyon walls. Triceratops, who had been spectating to the side with rapt attention, could not even distinguish whether the Seraphim's suicide bombing had succeeded. Smoke, flame and colorful smoke engulfed the crash site, making it unclear if anything was still left intact. Damn it, who won? Chapter 9, Psst, Wanna Buy a Mech? You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a hearty talk, Melinda had to leave in order to catch her flight back to Bentheim. As Ves accompanied her to the door, she turned around and bumped her communicator with his wrist. "What's this?" Ves asked as he activated his comm. It unfolded into a brochure. "It's the Young Tigers exhibition. Isn't it a competition for younger mech pilots to showcase their skills? I hear the Mech Corps and the local mercenary corps organize this event to recruit outstanding pilots. The Bright Republic publicized the YT every year. It had practically turned into a national holiday. His father even brought him to an event when he was little. Before he found out his aptitude made piloting mechs an unreachable dream. That was 10 years ago." Melinda said and reached over and tapped the brochure, flipping it over to the next page. In recent years they expanded the program to include a Mech Designer contest. It's not as thrilling as the mech battles, but the Mech Corps and a few big players pay a lot of attention to the people who do well in the contest. "I see." Ves nodded as he read through the brochure. It's conveniently open to mech designers who have just graduated or are in their final years in college. I guess the Republic wants to make sure it hasn't missed any talents. You should check out the rewards. Ves did, and widened his eyes. 1 ST prize, Gold Cup, 1 million bright credits. 2 ND prize, Silver Cup, 500,000 bright credits. 3 RD prize, Bronze Cup, 200,000 bright credits. That if he won first prize, then even if he couldn't meet the interest payment, he could at least afford other necessities. The raw materials to build up a mech didn't come cheap. These aren't even the real rewards, Ves. If you stand out during the competition, you might be able to get an audience with the real movers and shakers of the mech business. You can get job offers and commissions if they like your style. Ves smiled ruefully when he heard those words. The bigwigs probably aren't interested in a small businessman like me. I'm not one of those geniuses with fancy degrees from Mars or Estilon. Mars was the technological capital of the Greater United Terran Confederation, the oldest and most prestigious human superpower. Estilon was a hub of high-tech mech companies and stellar universities of the new Rubarth Empire, the most militarily dominant human state. Most of those geniuses already have their future careers lined up, probably with one of the Galactic 500. Melinda responded with a scowl. When they come back to visit sometimes, I sometimes wonder if I'm talking to a Terran or Rubarthan. It's like they forgot their roots. The Republic is a third-tier power, after all. Ves lamented, not entirely sincerely. He loved his home country and its high living standards. There were benefits to loving in a peaceful backwater. Our next-gen mechs are probably considered last-gen by the first-tier superpowers. Those destined for greatness couldn't be contained by the small bright Republic. Ves knew it was no use to feel jealous about those endowed with great opportunities. It all came down to strength. If Ves failed to win the first prize, then he just wasn't cut out for it. With the system backing him up, he might not excel in anything now, but it could be a different story a decade later. He waved his cousin goodbye and returned to his terminal. He reread the brochure for the YTE and registered for the competition after making sure he met all the requirements. Good thing the YTE starts in 2 months. I'm not confident of winning anything in my current state. Hopefully it'll be different when time passes. Ves went back to work. He logged into Iron Spirit and put in the hours to craft the Phantasm in his virtual workshop. Seeing each component roll out of the 3D printer and place them in the appropriate place helped him understand his creation further. When he finished the assembly and tested its specs, he put the new variant on sale. Fantasia 2 or Phantasm, Tier 1 Star, Base Model, Fantasia 2 or. Purchase price, 3,600 gold, minus 50%, premium price, 750 bright credits. Comparing the new Phantasm to his earlier Seraphim showed a stark contrast in price levels. Fantasia 2 or Seraphim, Tier 1 Star, Base Model, Fantasia 2 or. Purchase price, 8,800 gold. Premium price, 3,300 bright credits. His handcrafted Phantasm only sold for 1,800 gold, which represented a great deal. The next models after his first Phantasm would be fabricated automatically, leading to a slight reduction in quality and a doubling of prices. Still, at 3,600 gold a customer would not be disappointed at the Phantasm's performance. After Ves proudly put his mech on the market, he visited the usual mech enthusiast boards on the galactic net and boasted shamelessly about the Phantasm. Not every mech designer chose to create a variant with a reimagined armor configuration. At the very least, Ves hadn't found any other Fantasia variant on the market with a full-body Mirren 21 armor replacement. A few days passed by. Nothing else changed except occasionally picking up Lucky's gems. The benefits it provided remained minor as ever, but Ves still remained optimistic. Once his cash flow improved, he planned to buy a few exotic minerals and find out if Lucky was worth his gold classification. Ves worked on a fourth Fantasia variant these days, this time focusing on endurance and energy efficiency. He wanted to design a model that lasted longer and could run over long distances without negatively affecting its performance in battle. Though it emphasized different demands, Ves could still copy most of his work on the Phantasm to save time. After all, the Phantasm really presented a total baseline improvement over the original Fantasia 2 or. In the meantime, V's store page started to receive some views. Surprisingly, a repeat customer bought his handcrafted Phantasm. The seventh snake had also bought V's handmade Seraphim. Perhaps the seventh snake could be called a fan. Then came the younger generation of the Larkinsons. While most only intended to give their big sister Melinda face by take a look, some of them grew enchanted by the Seraphim's regal grace or the Phantasm's dark elegance. One rich nephew impulsively bought the Seraphim with credits, wasting 3 months of his personal savings. A couple of other nephews and nieces purchased the Phantasm, recognizing its superior performance as an ambush predator. A few even bought the 2RE as a joke, intending to surprise their friends with the model's ultimate move, thus Ves achieved 23 sales this week. Together with the original Seraphim, he achieved 24 sales in total, almost overcoming one-fourth of his mission goal. Only when Ves finished his latest customization did he log back in to check out his store page. His eyes widened with satisfaction as he realized Melinda had given him some much-needed help. The Phantasm sold well enough at the start, but its sales tapered off as no one else seemed to be interested, as only an occasional customer would come and buy. They must have been defeated by the Phantasm in a match. Together with the 50 design points Ves received from developing his latest design, he gained a total of 73 DP. He only needed a little more than a dozen mechs to accumulate 200 DP. Once he reached that point, he could treat himself to something good from the system's skill tree or store. He uploaded his newest work in Iron Spirit, and again he painstakingly built up its first model by hand. Just like when he fabricated the Phantasm, he felt a deeper connection with the Fantasia chassis by being involved in every step of the way. Once the model had been built up, Ves immediately chose to put it on sale. Fantasia 2R Nomad, Tier 1 Star, Base Model, Fantasia 2R. Purchase price, 3,400 gold, minus 50%. Premium price, 700 bright credits. The Nomad weighed more than the Phantasm, courtesy of its extra energy packs and armor plates. The Nomad nonetheless came without the other models' Fayette ECM and Festive Cloud Generator modules, which ultimately resulted in a lower price. Ves judged the Nomad's performance wasn't shabby, but it lacked a certain wow factor the previous two variants possessed. I'm starting to run out of ideas. I don't think I can force myself to pump out another Fantasia variant again without purchasing new parts, which I can't afford. With only half a month left to go, Ves needed to do something about the mission the system gave him. The Nomad's introduction to the market might help progress his sales, but he doubted he could achieve 100 sales before the deadline passed. I need to go out and push my mechs in person. Frankly, Ves was too poor to afford a more sophisticated solution. While he gained a healthy amount of credits from the sale of his virtual mechs, he needed to reserve the capital for his mech boutique's future operations. Besides, his previous ad purchase in Iron Spirit had been like a drop in the ocean. Ves dug into the assorted pile of junk the workshop stored in its backyard, managing to scavenge a broken, window-sized holographic picture frame. With his technical skills, it was a cinch to restore it. He fixed it up and also welded a lengthy pole underneath its frame. Once it worked, Ves loaded all of his mech designs in the picture frame's memory. After a quick thought, he also added in some footage copied from some public replays featuring his mechs winning. Naturally he ignored the matches where his mechs lost miserably. Ready to go out, Ves took the board and called for an air cab. "Hey Lucky, you wanna go out and take a look downtown?" Once his transportation arrived, he took a leisurely trip to the downtown area of Rodrigo's Rest. Having lived in the suburbs for much of his life, Ves was more than familiar with its streets. He knew where all the kids hung out after being released from school. He arrived at the local gaming center and took a spot next to the other people holding their boards ready. Lucky meanwhile jumped about here and there, exploring the trees and lantern posts in perplexed curiosity. Ves wasn't worried he'd run off, so he let his pet explore to his heart's content. "You new here?" A grungy guy looking like he needed a couple showers asked. "Yeah. Why were you here?" "What else? I have to sell my product urgently." Ves helplessly confessed. "Anything I should know?" The dos and don'ts. Grunge head mentioned a few short tips. Above all else, don't annoy the managers. They want kids to come in and out without any hassle. The two along with the others waited patiently for the kids to come out of school. Once the first eager teenagers arrived, Ves went to work. "Do you need a new mech that's swifter and lasts longer? Then I've got a mech for you." Naturally, most potentates ignored the people soliciting their products. Only a couple of young pilots spared a glance, but their eyes only stayed focused for a second or two before they entered the game center. Standing for hours at a time holding an animated board tired Ves out. He gritted his teeth and carried on with his work to push his mechs into the minds of the visiting players. Things changed once Lucky returned. The cat evidently had his fill of exploring the environment. It effortlessly jumped on top of a trash can near Ves and rested languidly atop its cover like a king surveying his serfs. The cat's fine workmanship and agreeable expression attracted a few girls. So cute. Can I pet it? It's such a big baby. Lucky appeared overwhelmed, but Ves put a hand on its neck to calm him down. Please don't press against my cat. He's young and hasn't been out very much. After realizing the young women weren't out to hurt him, Lucky meowed and stared at them with his shiny eyes. So adorable. Let me take a picture with him. I love his liveliness. It's even better than the dog I have back home. Did you build him yourself? Ves coughed awkwardly and shamelessly answered, I was involved in its creation, yes. Lucky is unique and isn't for sale, but if you're interested in my other creations, how about you take a look at my phantasm? As groups of squealing girls tried to pet and take pictures with Lucky, Ves allowed them to do so as long as they behaved. The cat seemed to lap up all of the attention, as if he was making it up for the times when Ves appeared too preoccupied with his work to play with his pet. Nonetheless, the steady stream of girls allowed Ves to conveniently insert a few mentions of his products. Be sure to search for the Fantasia 2 or Phantasm when you visit the in-game market. It's the perfect mech if you want to look good while kicking your friend's ass. Maybe 99 out of 100 girls paid zero attention to V's words. If the one girl who actually paid attention visited his store page, then Ves felt his hard work was worth the trouble. Surprisingly, his increased strength allowed him to stand on the sidewalk and last a little bit longer. Holding the picture frame up tired him a little less than he expected. His physical strength also translated into mental strength in a way Ves couldn't really figure out. He felt the effects anyway. This made him reconsider the utility in upgrading his other useless attributes. Maybe upgrading my dexterity will make my thoughts nimbler, and upgrading my endurance will increase my willpower. The system isn't what it seems in the first place. There's a lot depth to it and I've only dipped my toes so far. After the sun started to dip down below cloudy curtains horizon, Ves called it a day. He ate a quick meal at a local restaurant and took a shuttle ride home. Sinking tiredly into his sofa, Ves activated the system and checked his progress. Mission progress, 35 out of 100 sales. He sold 12 mechs today. If his sales kept up the same pace, then he'd definitely accomplished the mission within a week. He also accumulated 198 DP. With just a few more sales, he'd reached the threshold of 200 DP, opening up a lot of options in the system's shop and skill tree. Though other mech designers might scoff at V's pathetic street peddling, all of his hard work had paid off for him personally. Naturally, Lucky contributed much to his success. He picked up the sleepy cat and stroked his muzzle. You've done a good job acting cute. I'll order a few treats and have it delivered tomorrow. Lucky meowed in contentment. Chapter 10, White Elephant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ves kept up his sales routine for a week. He visited different cities each day in order to maximize his exposure. Lucky always accompanied him, and with the help of his charm he managed to draw enough attention to his products to sell 100 mechs with less than 2 weeks to spare. He also accumulated a hefty 263 design points, but hadn't spent them yet. He thought it would be better if he received his next mission first. Congratulations for completing tutorial, part 3. You have received a 10-year combat mech production license lottery ticket. Please visit the lottery page to redeem this ticket. For completing the mission with time to spare, you have been awarded a bonus lottery ticket. The system sure loved lotteries, giving Ves a bad feeling. His luck with the lottery so far had been mixed. Hey system, shouldn't you have sent me another mission by now? Please do not get addicted to missions. The Mech Designer System only offers missions in order to guide its users to the right path. Only babies require constant hand-holding. Are you a baby? Ves practically spat blood. Who's the baby? You are a baby. In fact, Ves felt rather terrible after hearing those words. He had indeed grown accustomed to the system's guidance. Now that he lacked a clear mission to strive towards, Ves felt as if he was adrift. No, that's not right. I still have to prepare for the Young Tigers exhibition that start in 1.5 months. I also have to make progress in collecting 5 million credits to pay off my interest in 2 months. In other words, he needed to advance his skills and earn a lot of money. Ves could work on that without the system generating another tutorial to tell him how to accomplish those goals. Too bad I can't earn any more completion rewards. That reminds me, I still need to use up last mission's rewards. Rubbing his palms, Ves turned to the lottery page. He ignored the option to spend DP for a lottery draw and instead selected the option to use the tickets on hand. First, he activated his bonus ticket. Same as his previous lottery draws, it only entitled him to win an award from the lowest pool of prizes. The low-quality ticket snapped in half, revealing a familiar spinning wheel. Ves vigorously yanked the wheel, causing it to make clacking sounds as the pointer spun over a rapid variety of rewards. The wheel slowed down after half a minute. Time appeared to slow down as the wheel ticked forward in an exaggerated fashion. It allowed Ves to read the rewards hovering around the pointer: endurance candy, alien party ears, 100,000 bright credits, lantern of imperfection, 1 day haunt. The pointer passed over the endurance candy, swept past the strange ears, and almost landed at the sum of credits. Ves never objected to having more money. You have received a lantern of imperfection. The system ended up defying V's wishes yet again. Instead of receiving something that he could desperately use, he instead received an old-fashioned burnished bronze device that had obviously lived better days. Lantern of imperfection. Light the lantern and shine it against a mech or component to reveal structural flaws. The revealed flaws are only visible to the holder of the lantern. The lamp contains enough oil to burn for 5 hours. This could be useful. Ves remarked, actually a little impressed by the generosity of the lottery. Machines that could analyze and reveal structural flaws existed, but only high-tech researchers and manufacturers were able to afford them. The assistance of such a device helped prevent defective material from being incorporated into a mech. For some parts, it was a lot more troublesome to replace once an assembler combined it with other parts and placed it in a mech. Too bad the lantern only lasted 5 hours. Ves had no idea where he could buy additional lamp oil either. The system, being its usual obstinate self, remained silent to V's questions. Now it's time for the main show. Ves smiled as he beheld the shiny golden ticket that had actually materialized in front of him. With a satisfying pull, he ripped the ticket in half. Festive bells rang out as a transparent man-sized pagoda dropped down from the roof. The pagoda consisted of 9 stories, and each story spun in an alternating direction. The first story spun to the left, while the second to the right, and the third back to the left, and so on. It all gave off a sense of grandeur to Ves, as if Buddha himself had descended to give him a reward. The spectacle raised V's hopes. If the introduction already looked so impressive, then he surely wouldn't receive something cheap. Approach the pagoda to determine the tier of your reward. This was different. Puzzled, Ves took a step forward, and then another when nothing special happened. Somehow, he couldn't get any closer to the pagoda no matter how many steps it took. A formless pressure arrived that pressed down on his body. Neither gravity nor air pressure changed. Everything else remained the same. Only the pagoda itself rose up in the air, dimming the workshop from V's sights. Ves felt his vision dim from the pressure threatening to burst his head. Nevertheless, he clenched his teeth and kept putting one foot over another. When his consciousness was on the verge of passing out, the pressure disappeared. He fell to the ground as his breath wheezed as if he had run a marathon. The strange event affected him severely. He didn't exactly know what the pressure represented, but he hoped he did okay. Evaluation completed. You are eligible to draw a reward from the 5th tier. The pagoda transformed in response to the judgment. Its top 4 and bottom 4 stories slowed down their rotations, eventually falling still. Only the 5th story of the pagoda continued spinning its merry way. I don't know exactly what the pagoda did to me, but I guess did an okay job. Ves concluded spuriously. He really had little clue why the system needed to resort to such mysticism in order to give him a simple production license. I really need to do better next time. I'm not resigned to remain average for the rest of my life. Now that the test had ended, Ves easily approached the side of the pagoda. Its fifth floor continued to turn, whipping up a small current of air that blasted V's face. Even Lucky jumped down from the couch and inspected the strange floating structure. His face looked as if it was wondering what the fuck made it spin. A small, hand-sized bell appeared in midair. It was one of those bells that hung in ancient Terran temples. A small cord hung from the clapper that allowed the bell to make its ringing. Please pull the cord when ready. Ves held the end of the cord and pulled firmly. The bell released a delicate tingling tone, causing the pagoda's fifth story to shine brighter even as its rotation lost its driving force. Like the regular lottery wheel, the pagoda's many sides portrayed various prizes. Ves even recognized a few of their profiles and determined they were mostly last-gen models. This meant that the Mechs first saw commercial release in the last 30 to 70 years, which was a fairly good range. Any mech models older than last-gen were considered obsolete. Their performance just couldn't keep up with the models currently in use even in an assisting capacity. The price of such mechs often matched the cost of raw materials and production, meaning Ves would never be able to make any profit even if he handcrafted the mech in his own boutique. On the other hand, newer models also presented a few problems to Ves. The more current the mech model, the stricter its license. Only trusted mech designers and large commercial enterprises received approval to buy them. In addition, newer designs incorporated more advanced technology that required special machines to fabricate. His 3D printer was just a run-of-the-mill current-gen product with no special features. It was capable of printing almost any of last-gen's specialist components, but if it came to the current generation's fancy tech, then he may need to acquire millions or even billions of credits worth of production lines. The pagoda finally stopped its lumbering spin. V's stomach sunk as he recognized the white, medium-sized mech on its front-facing wall. Congratulations. You have received a 10-year production license of the following mech, National Aeromotive Caesar Augustus CA-1. Shit. Ves muttered as all of his excitement drained from his expression. His calm burst up as Ves received a new mail. He numbly tapped the message. It came with a lot of legal bullshit from the so-called Future Sons Technology Institution. Ves skimmed through the lengthy texts. We hereby grant you with an unlimited production license of the Caesar Augustus CA-1, valid for a duration of 10 years from the signing of the included contract. No matter how many misgivings Ves had about the CA-1, he was stuck with it. He quickly signed all of the contracts to get the paperwork out of his sight. He received another message a scant few minutes later, showing that the local had successfully approved of the contract. Ves now possessed a legal license to produce the Caesar Augustus. Fucking double shit. Ves felt like he wanted to cry but had no tears. The Caesar Augustus had a colorful history. Ves happened to be familiar with it, because it had been a lesson in college on what not to do. The story started 50 years ago, when National Aeromotives, a renowned manufacturer of air cars and shuttles, decided to enter the mech market. They adopted a two-pronged approach. The first approach was to license a couple of mainstream designs, retool a couple of factories, and pump out loads of shoddy quality but cheaply priced mechs. The sheer quantity of mechs they made allowed them to figure out the intricacies of mech production quite rapidly. The quality of their mechs improved with each new production run. The second method was to allow Jason Kozlowski, the son of NA's CEO, to learn how to design mechs. He directly attended one of Estalon's premier mech design program. An important thing to mention was that Jason had been a spoiled brat. As could be imagined, Jason spent much of his time on Estalon attending parties and getting drunk off his ass. Only his superior genes enabled him to perform well enough in class to graduate. Once Jason returned home, he made a high-sounding announcement to the galactic press. He claimed that he would take just 1 month to design a fully original mech that would outperform all of that period's current generation mechs. Many industry insiders scoffed at such a boast. Forget about outperforming a current generation mech. Many freshly graduated mech designers weren't even capable of designing a model that could outperform a last-gen mech. It took years of experience, learning many skills and acquiring many new technologies to even be capable of producing such a stellar mech. In any case, the public hung on to Jason's every word. A face this handsome wouldn't renege on his promise, right? After the announcement, a couple of black-suited men quickly brought the prodigal son away from the press conference and he was never seen again for a month. Some conspiracy theorists guessed that National Aeromotives wanted the public to forget about Jason's pledge. They received an unexpected surprise when Jason showed up to the press exactly 30 days later. A slightly disheveled but attractive young man then proceeded to introduce his month-long effort. He domineeringly named it after the first ancient Roman emperor, for it was indeed capable of outperforming most mechs of the current generation. Just its majestic posture and stately head design showed that Jason spent quite a lot of time matching the mech's aesthetics to its superb offensive power. The Caesar Augustus offered supreme offense and supreme defense in the medium weight class. By far the most expensive component was National Aeromotive's proprietary armor plating, originally designed to protect its most luxurious line of space shuttles from direct microasteroid impacts. Though expensive and difficult to produce, the armor offered superior protection that approached next-gen standards at the time. The CA-1 also provided a variety of offensive options. Its main weapons were its two wrist-mounted laser cannons. Missiles mounted on its shoulders provided some long-ranged indirect firing options, while a classic sword and shield built out of the same excellent material of its armor made the mech a monster in melee range. While Jason showed off a holographic model of the white-painted mech and its admittedly impressive capabilities, the experts combed over its specifications. They quickly couldn't hold in their laughter. The Caesar Augustus hid a bevy of issues underneath its perfect exterior. Jason crammed the CA-1 with so many gadgets that it affected the frame's integrity. Any damage that got past the armor could easily damage 5 essential subsystems, either crippling the mech or at least take it off the battlefield. In order to save space, many of those subsystems got tangled together, making it a pain in the ass for any technician to replace even a single faulty power line. The mech also lacked endurance. It peaked early but had no staying power. Its missile capacity could be emptied in seconds. Its wrist-mounted laser cannons built up an alarming amount of heat that Jason had done almost nothing to mitigate. And even if he did, the mech's average energy capacity meant it couldn't feed the weapons long enough anyway. Fortunately, Jason hadn't been conceited enough to add a flight system to the already over-engineered mech. Its energy would just drain faster in that case. All of this meant that VES was now stuck with one of NA's biggest commercial flops in recent times. The CA-1 was a white elephant that was difficult to produce and required constant babysitting. The most troublesome thing about producing it was that its special armor plating required a dedicated machine to produce. V's 3D printer wasn't advanced enough to produce it on its own. It was impossible for VES to produce the stock model of Caesar Augustus in 2 months. He lacked the time, money, skill, and equipment to accomplish such a clusterfuck of a production. And even if he did manage to cobble up a model, it was a question whether it would sell. However, the system awarded him with only just one production license, and for better or worse, VES was stuck with the elephant. It's not like I'm stuck with the stock model. I still have the Mech Designer System. If VES could use the system to redesign the CA-1, he might be able to come up with a less demanding version of Jason's first masterpiece. He wasn't ready to give up. A tentative plan already drew in his mind.